Hey, TCC and 49ers faithful, are you coming to the draft party? Because we have been hearing from so many that they are. You're not going to want to miss the opportunity.
The outpouring is huge. Everyone is
29th from 4 to 8 at Back Alley Brewery in Galt. It's going to be so much fun. You're not going to want to miss it.
Not at all.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to a 49ers news update / Q&A show because the 49ers are out making moves and showing interest in other players as well. And all the while, we just want to have a great conversation with everyone about how they're feeling about some of the moves the Niners are making and potentially moves that they are going to continue to make. So the whole time, just start populating chat with questions, and we will make sure we get to them.
All about those questions, Ant. All about those questions. I'm looking forward to talking with the Cutback crew about this and just kind of seeing where things are at and how things are going. Lots of stuff happening, lots of stuff going on. Bomber T just said, you guys think Deebo is demanding too much money, and that's part of the reason why there's drama going on with Deebo Samuel. And we'll get to some of that drama. I don't know if that's necessarily what is happening here at this point in time with Deebo Samuel. I think there may be a little bit of trolling and frustration going on here with Deebo Samuel, and he's really sick of media questions and media people doing things. He's unfollowed Grant Cohn. He's said as much towards the end of last season about the dumb, silly questions that were being asked during press conferences from members of the media. There was how this essentially started was yesterday, someone coming out and saying Deebo has unfollowed the Niners on Twitter or Instagram, one of the two, in an aspect in the area where he wasn't originally following them. They made a whole lot of hullabaloo about nothing, and then things snowballed to today where he's gotten rid of his profile picture, which was Niners related. All of his 49ers related pictures are gone. And so people are trying to glean something into this. I don't know if this necessarily means anything.
I mean, when it comes to negotiations and more what Bomber T was saying, of course, Deebo Samuel is going to ask for more money than potentially he's even worth, because you have to start a point to where the money is going to be, and then it slowly will work down to where both sides can have an agreement. John Lynch's offer to Deebo Samuel is going to be one that's lower. You just hope it's not insulting, and that's what you're trying to do when you're trying to come to an agreement. You want to come out with the lowest number possible without insulting your player. And then Deebo Samuel wants to have the other end, and they're going to work it out, and that's what an agent's for, and they're going to come to some sort of an agreement at some point. As far as the social media goes, I do believe that Deebo Samuel either is having fun with these guys. I think he is tired of a little bit of what they're doing. But when it comes down to it, why would the 49ers let anything that happens on social media dictate how they handle contract negotiations? What Deebo Samuel says to them is definitely more important than what he does on social media. So I think this is one of those things it's really a no-go for anyone that, as far as in the organization, I don't think they care. I think that what this is more for the fans and for the media that pays attention to players' social medias to determine whether they believe that the negotiations are going well or not. To me, I believe it's completely irrelevant to the 49ers and their negotiations with Deebo Samuel.
This is just an interesting situation. It's drama filled, and for the sake of drama is what it feels like. And look, there's no way to know one way or the other whether something is going south with negotiations or not. What I will say is this: the 49ers have shown that when the signings do occur, they happen around training camp time. That's when things actually happen. And with all of the wide receivers and getting paid this offseason, including recently Stephon Diggs getting a big contract number, the market is shifting in favor of wide receivers in a big, huge way. And Deebo Samuel just did something that we haven't seen from many wide receivers in this league. He had 1,500 yards receiving, 500 yards rushing. So yes, Deebo is going to be setting that number as high as humanly possible. The Niners are going to try and set that thing hopefully around where they probably originally wanted to be able to pay him. And then they're going to have to find a way to come to the middle and come together to make this work out.
Well, and Christopher Blankenship just said, trade him to the Jets for the 10th and 38th pick, draft Kyle Hamilton and Christian Watson. I love Deebo as a player, but wouldn't get through the bank or give the bank to him basically for just 1 year. I think there will be somewhat of a push from some of the 49ers fans and faithful to go ahead and move on from Deebo Samuel and move in a different direction. The question is, can any of these guys or a multitude of guys do what Deebo Samuel does in your offense?
No.
No, I don't think there is. I do like Christian Watson. I believe he's a dynamic player, and I would love for the 49ers to get him. I just don't want them to get him at the expense of Deebo Samuel because it's a completely different thing. Now, if the 49ers were deciding that Brandon Ayuk was going to be the long-term option over Deebo Samuel, that would be a different conversation.
Correct.
I don't believe that's what's going on.
No.
I believe Kyle Shanahan wants to have Deebo Samuel on this team because he unlocks different parts of the game for even his teammates, but also for Kyle Shanahan's offense that nobody else can do. And in fact, no one in the league can do. Everyone is looking for Deebo Samuel kind of players with Deebo Samuel kind of traits. And when it comes down to it, there's only one Deebo Samuel. And I've heard a comp this week that Cordell Patterson was Deebo before Deebo. No, he wasn't. There's nothing about Cordell Patterson that says he's as good at doing what Deebo Samuel does.
There's not a player on the market right now, Ant. There's not a player in the league. There's not a player coming out in this draft that has shown they can be what Deebo Samuel is. So until you can identify who said person is with the comp comparison, and I found it funny, there was a lot of Traylon Burks conversations during the combine about, he models his game after Deebo.
Yeah.
He's trying to be Deebo. He can try and be Deebo all he wants, but he's not anywhere close to what Deebo Samuel is with the ball in his hands in space.
No, there's going to be a bunch of Deebo Samuel wannabes. A bunch of guys that have a tremendous amount of talent that think they can do what Deebo can. The problem is, there's not that many elite running backs that can play with the vision that Deebo Samuel does.
Correct.
There's not that many receivers that can get open in this similar kind of way that Deebo Samuel does, and that is as physical as him with the ball in his hands. Those players just don't exist. So people can try all they want, but more than likely what's going to happen is these players, they're going to find that they're not good enough at one area of that game, and they're just not. So there are players that have Deebo-like qualities, but they do not have the complete package of Deebo Samuel. And I've seen Christopher Blankenship said, will Deebo be used the same with Trey as quarterback one?
Why not?
You could argue he would actually be used even more extended because now you add in the read option game as well with Deebo in the backfield, and there's a different aspect there. I think there's the argument that that is going around right now that maybe Deebo will suffer because Brandon Ayuk will have a better chemistry potentially with Trey Lance. But the thing with Trey Lance is going to be when Kyle Shanahan calls a play, he needs to go to read one. And if it's Deebo Samuel and Deebo Samuel's open, he's going to be expected to give him the football or he's going to get an earful when he gets back to the sideline. So I think when it comes down to it, Trey is not going to discriminate against certain players. He's going to get the ball to his playmakers in space. And one of the best guys to do it is Deebo Samuel because he's one of the best in the league.
Very true. Jayla just said, slow day, crew? Not for us. No, we got actually plenty of things to talk about. It was just the first question that came up in chat, Jayla. Bomber said, would be a total waste to trade him now. They need to franchise tag him and see how his health holds up. Don't you guys agree? Listen, I think it's a more realistic possibility for the 49ers to franchise tag Deebo Samuel than it is for them to trade Deebo Samuel right now.
Well, they actually have to do nothing right now.
Well, currently nothing. I'm talking if you get to a point where you can't necessarily work out the agreement on an extension right away, before they even decide to trade him, they would try franchise tagging him first.
Oh, yeah. It makes more sense. You play out this year on his rookie pay scale if you can't come to an agreement. If he holds out and all that, he doesn't get paid enough money. I've seen people, he'll just hold out. He's going to make like $4 million, a little over $4 million this year. That's not enough. You get penalized every single day. You don't show up to practice and you don't do that. So he's not going to hold out an entire year. No. He will come in. It's just not feasible for these players to hold out anymore. And then the thing you got coming after that is, you got the franchise tag. You can pay him top level money for a wide receiver, top average money if he signs that tender. If not, you can put him exclusive rights. If somebody wants to trade for him, there's 2 first-round picks that you get coming your way. And then you don't have to worry about it being 10 and 38 like Mr. Blankenship said, but it could actually be, a first in the next 2 years. So that could be even more value for Deebo Samuel. So I think that the 49ers right now still carry all the leverage, but I don't think these discussions are where people think they are. I think this is still a filling out process, and I have to kind of trust the front office to go ahead and work in good faith with Deebo Samuel because they did with George Kittle, they did with Fred Warner, and they've said they've also made sure they had enough money for Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa until they prove otherwise. I mean, if it was going to be different, they would have already traded him like they did with DeForest Buckner. Like
you would think.
This thing would have already happened. They plan on having Deebo Samuel in there, and I think these negotiations are probably fine. But It's not going to play out on social media.
No, and that's why I don't think the social media thing necessarily means anything. Deebo has said, not everything that I do on social media has anything I tweet out that doesn't have to necessarily do with football or the team that I play for. He said this now a couple of times the last few weeks. So the fact that this got brought up yesterday about the fact that he wasn't following the Niners on one of his social media accounts and the corresponding move is this, I think it's just him reiterating a similar message that he's already put out there. Not everything I do or say on social media has anything to do with my current situation or myself as an athlete playing football. It's just about me personally, like maybe something that's going on with me in my life or something else that's non-related to football. I think it's just a troll. I think he's just trying to make a point to everybody and trying to show that, you know what, these media narratives want to try and control the narrative. Well, how about I control the narrative for you and get you guys talking about absolute nonsense?
Yeah, I think so.
Could be that.
I to me right now, I'm just not worried about this. I'll worry about this when there's more news or
there's actually something to discuss.
Yeah, I don't. There's not a player or a comp player in this draft that can come close to Deebo Samuel. There's not even a Chase Claypool, a Justin Jefferson. Those players are not in there. There's guys that have elite trait, but not like our elite receiver right now. So to me, trading Deebo Samuel for a couple picks, I don't think you're going to get enough value back in those picks. So I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. It doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're Jay Ellie here and 3 first rounders and Deebo could be yours. What price of 3 first round picks?
Yeah, like a Tyreek Hill kind of deal. Somebody's going to be willing to give the 49ers. Maybe the Jets would be willing to give the
That's a lot.
But there's no guarantee those picks end up being.
If I'm the Jets though right now, do you want to do something like this? Would you want to be going all in with how much the rest of the AFC has? I mean, isn't this the time right now to take the next year or two and just slowly build out your roster?
How long do you think Robert Saleh has to be the head coach there?
I think he's got 3 years.
No.
You don't think so?
No. They have to show vast improvement this year.
Oh, boy.
Because you know what he's not? He's not an offensive play caller.
Accurate.
He's a defensive head coach. Defensive coaches in this league don't have as long. Ask Brian Flores. You don't have as long to turn things around. You have an opportunity, boom, gone. Offensive minds is the way the league is going. Fantasy football drives things. Fan support, that drives things. And it's all built around offense. That's just the way it is.
Fair there, Ant. Very fair there indeed. And Jag already hitting up the TCC and ourselves with the $5 super
up,
chat.
Jag?
Hey, TCC crew, we as fans, sometimes impatient for the franchise building. You have to build a team not for 3 to 4 years, but for at least a decade, in my opinion. There's a lot of people who feel that way, and the Niners have taken a very balanced approach on this. They haven't done the big all-in moves, Ant, and done the crazy, bringing in and making sure you pay a bunch of money to a bunch of different spots.
Yeah.
So very interesting, to say the least, how the Niners have gone about doing this. But I imagine there's going to be a point in time where they're going to flip that script a little bit on that.
I think there's multiple trains of thought, and I think it also determined by where your coach is and where your front office is, and how quickly they can be fired, or what your owner wants. You have these guys that get in the last year. They're not willing to turn over to a rookie quarterback because they know they're going to be gone. I mean, look what happened to Nagy in Chicago. He gets the rookie quarterback. You're never going to see the life of that quarterback developing into what could potentially be a star because you're out. So depending on your security and where you're at is how you can build. The 49ers at some point, even though Kyle Shanahan has been to 2 NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl, need to win a Super Bowl. It's right now hedged on the fact that you have Trey Lance, you have a young rookie quarterback, sophomore quarterback that can come in and get it done for you and potentially be a next level talent. So right now they have that to play with. They have cushion, but there can't be a 10-year plan that you can execute at times. Sometimes you have to decide to scrap 10 and think 5, so that way you can get a Super Bowl. And in fact, I believe right now the 49ers are on a 4-year plan because they need to win one in Trey's rookie pay scale. So if they don't win in the next 4 years, there won't be 10 years of this regime in San Francisco. So they need to get it done that way.
Fair. Fair. We're going to see what happens, and we'll see how they try and build this thing out, and we'll see what decisions need to be made. The Niners are making moves, and they are signing guys. They are bringing guys in. And no, those signings aren't Deebo Samuel. And no, the moves aren't trading Jimmy Garoppolo, which are the 2 things 49ers fans want it to be. But they did just bolster the depth a little bit. Well,
actual video of Jimmy Garoppolo right now. That's probably what he's doing. Until Jimmy's shoulders right, Alex. I mean, there's going to be no movement, right?
Not fair. I mean, there shouldn't be any.
Or the draft, potentially.
If a team misses out on their guy. You and I have talked about this. I was under the impression that he was going to need to show that he could physically be able to go in order to make a trade. But you're right. If someone doesn't necessarily get the guy that they want, And I know there was the big trade, right? The Eagles moved back, the Saints flopped back up, and people were like, oh, the Saints are going after skill position guy. And I was like, maybe they're going to package those 2 first-round picks and move up and make sure they get themselves Malik Willis or one of these quarterbacks there and jump in front of some of these teams. If one of those teams doesn't hit on the guy that they want, they're in trouble.
Yeah, they could jump up in front of Carolina. You got Carolina sitting at 6. Last year, Carolina was sitting near 10, and the 49ers catapulted over them into the 3rd spot and left no room for them to be able to finagle and get up and get Trey Lance. It could happen to them again because the Saints have positioned themselves to go up and get that guy. So, yeah, this is nerve-wracking, I think, for Carolina, and Jimmy Garoppolo could be their fallback plan. The question is, what are they willing to give up for Jimmy Garoppolo on draft day? If they don't get their guy, potentially, the 49ers could come out with a nice haul. So there could be a situation where the 49ers are sitting in a better situation than anyone thought if they're able to pull off a draft day trade for Jimmy Garoppolo with Carolina.
David Campbell just said Aunt Jimmy will be traded when we are all at Back Alley Brew in Galt. That would be nice. He's not wrong.
That I would love to see the excitement, and Paul said he's going to be there too. He plans on being there
Paul's
as well.
Gonna be there also.
Awesome. Yeah, the reaction. I'll actually see the physical reaction of everybody that's there. I want to see how David responds to that. Are we going to get some jumping up and heel clicking? Are we going to get some fists? We get some tiger celebrations. I am curious. Yeah.
Couple of those would be nice.
Maybe some roads humping the air type celebrations. Yeah.
Well, a couple of those, and just a couple of hip thrusts in there. You know what I mean. I got it. Would be fantastic.
Yeah,
that would be amazing. JLA's not wrong either. That would be absolutely phenomenal. It would be fantastic. But look, the Niners haven't made moves yet, but they did sign Marcus Johnson, a wide receiver, and who's been a couple stops, been a little bit all over the place. I think he started in Philadelphia, ended up with the Colts in 2018 through 2020, and finished last year off with the Tennessee Titans. And started 3 games, played in 7 for them last season. Listen, the big thing about Marcus Johnson is speed. He apparently is a burner prospect. When the Eagles brought him in as an undrafted free agent, that's what they loved about him was the speed. Very highly regarded in Indianapolis during the 3-year stint he was there because of his speed, and they loved what he could potentially bring to the table there. In fact, his last year in Indy, he was on the active roster for 11 games that season, which is the most games he's been active for in an entire season for one organization. So this is definitely just a 90-man roster addition with some upside, and they're taking a look at some burner prospects, some guys who have some top-end speed and seeing if maybe they can add anything to this roster.
Gunner.
Think so?
You lost your gunner. He went.
Trenton Cannon?
No, not just Trenton Cannon.
Sherfield also.
Trent Sherfield. So you're looking to bolster your special teams again. You get a wide receiver that has potential to take the top off the defense, but also can help you on special teams. And if you have elite speed and you put them on the outside as a gunner, they can do good things for you. So I think this is a special teams move. I think this is something that they're going to let this guy come in and compete and see if he can take the Trent Sherfield role, but also balancing it out in case they're not able to get the guys that they want to get in the draft. That's why you see guys like Keyshawn Johnson and those guys that are on the roster. We all know they're going to go into training camp with 12, 10 to 12 receivers. You have to have enough to be able to make it through practices. So they're going to bring guys in as 90-man roster, but I think you see the potential to be a special teams benefit. So that's why you go ahead and make the move.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking of it that way. The one concern I do have about him is last year specifically, he ended up on the IR twice and ended up cutting his season short back in November with Tennessee. So I don't know what the injuries were. I didn't read on what they were, but the fact that he went on an injury designation twice last year means something was nagging him throughout the whole season. But I trust that the San Francisco 49ers did their due diligence here, and I don't think it was anything crazy. It wasn't a major injury like a knee or an ACL or something broken or something like that. It was probably something like a hammy or something with his low body ankle maybe.
Yeah, and they have zero risk. I mean, this isn't going to be one of your top 51 contracts. He's not going to count against your cap. So you bring the guy in, you let him compete, and there's no real worries. If you wake up the next day and he's gone, the team is not worried. As far as the team is not really concerned about it. I'm sure the player himself is concerned and his family's concerned because, he's trying to make a paycheck. But when it comes down to it, that's what these guys are. A lot of these guys are depth pieces that are going to get an opportunity to compete, and they got to go prove their worth. But you got to carve out a niche for yourself, and that could be special teams, and that's what I believe he came in for. But you do like adding speed to your team. Anytime you can add speed to your roster, you go out and you do it.
You try to anyway, and you do everything that you possibly can. And the Niners also did something fun, Cutback crew. They started bringing in some gentlemen. And they started bringing in gentlemen from the draft to start talking things out. And a guy that we really like, Danny Gray at SMU, was someone who came and is taking a visit with San Francisco. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff about Danny Gray right now. A lot of things with Mr. Gray from SMU, where people are starting to really pay notice and give notice to this guy. He's flying up draft boards. I'm seeing some people saying he could go in the 3rd or 4th round. If a team really falls in love with him, they think he's that type of that level of talent. You and I absolutely love this guy. I would hate for people to realize how talented this guy is and swoop in early, but I do like the fact that San Francisco is bringing him in and really taking a look at this.
Yeah, I mean, he could actually be a target at the 105 comp or even at 134. I have a 3rd-round grade on him. I think he's fantastic. I really like him. I like the way there's been some questions about his route running. I think his route running is good enough. He'll continue to develop in the NFL, especially once he gets, the one-on-one coaching that he really needs. I think he's going to make vast improvements, but you've seen players be able to come out of SMU and be very, very good with the way they handle the pass game in the NFL. I think that he's one of those guys that it could be an impact player in the NFL. He showed that he has the speed at the combine running under a sub 4.4 40, a 4.38 I believe it was. So he's a guy that's got wheels. But what I love is the way he goes after the ball. He fights for contested passes. And he comes back to the football. He has a real understanding of where he's supposed to be. He doesn't drift on his routes. Those are things that I really like. So I think he would be a nice selection for the 49ers. He's one of the guys that I target. Everyone's already getting an idea of who the guys are I like, and he's one of them. I did think he was potential to fall, to the 5th round where the 49ers could snatch him up. But, the way that his stock is rising right now, potentially they might have to go for him in the 4th or 3rd round. And I would be okay with that because I think he has that kind of value and he could definitely add to this team.
Very true, and he could very well add to this team. And the Niners are going to take a look at all the receiver options with a lot of questions on the table. I just saw Matthew Smith said Deebo is leaving to the Jets, and we asked him in the chat, you think so? And he said, I hope so. So, Matthew, why do you hope so? Okay. Why do you hope the Jets trade for him? I would love to hear from you on that. We can have a conversation from it. Great one just said, just take Valus in the 5th or 6th round. I also see Jay Ellie saying draft visits. When is the local one? I think he's talking about the Niners pro day that they're holding. That's April 13th. It's next Wednesday. That's when that is.
Yeah, and I seen that great one said we need to take a safety at O-line with our first 2 picks. The question is, what safety? If Jalen Petrie is there, I think that's a bang-up selection. But what is the other safety? Because if Petrie goes before 61, who exactly are you going to roll with? Yeah. We know how I feel about Woolen. I think
Talik Woolen.
I believe he can be a safety, 6'4", over 200 pounds, runs a 4.2 40, ridiculously fast. Coverage skills, the way the 49ers play safety and having them be universal and be able to do it all. You add Tarvarius Moore, that's what he was, a corner that can play safety as a 4-3. I would be interested in him. And then, of course, now they're coming out and saying they're interested in Montana State cornerback Trey Webb. Trey Webb used to be with San Jose State, went there, 6'1", over 200 pounds. To me, appears to be a guy, once again, that's a corner that has safety skills or safety ability. So the 49ers are looking for those guys that have coverage skills that they can translate into the safety position. So besides Jalen Petrie, I wonder who you want at 61. There are good players. Don't get me wrong. I'm just curious.
So JLA and great one just say Kirby Joseph.
Okay, good one. Yeah, I like Kirby Joseph.
Not a bad one.
I don't know if I would take him at 61. I think he's kind of between 61 and 93.
I would prefer to take a guy like Kirby Joseph at 93 because of the potential type, the high-level type players that could be on the board at 61. I like Kirby Joseph. I don't like Kirby Joseph as much as I like other guys who could be down there at the 61 spot, right? I don't like him as much as other guys that you could potentially trade up for and around that 61 spot and get a more impactful player there. Not to say that Kirby Joseph, I don't think he won't have impact. He's just not going to be as polished as some of these other guys coming out around that spot.
Yeah, and I mean, we've really liked the Illini players over the years.
Accurate.
Secondary wise,
Illini, Syracuse, and Washington's secondary players. I mean,
Washington's players are fantastic.
They're phenomenal. Including, I cannot wait till we get to Jen.
Yeah.
I cannot wait because, dude, I can't find him anywhere.
I know.
The dude from Washington?
Yeah.
I know he's in the draft, but he is not on a single draft board, Ant.
I know.
Could that be Mr. Irrelevant? Could that be pick 262?
I think he's undrafted, but we'll get into that with the gems.
That's true. We will get into that with the gems. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
No, I think Kirby Joseph's a good player. I wonder if I would value him kind of in the 80 range. So I guess, you look at that, maybe they move up from 93, potentially you could do that.
Fair.
It all depends on who's available at 61 too, and what their method is. Are they going to go get after it? You know what I mean? Or what? If they go up and go get someone, they move up from 61, I don't think it'll be a safety that they go get. My question with the 49ers getting a safety early is last year everyone tied them to Morwig. It was going to be Morwig. The 49ers were going to go get Trevon Morwig. They didn't. So I wonder what their value in the room is actually of safety.
It might not be, Ant. It might not be. And I just saw Matthew Smith. He said, well, I'm a Jets fan, LOL. So that makes sense. Ant, no wonder he wants Deebo Samuel to end up with the Jets.
Oh, well, yeah, good call.
If you didn't want that, I'd have questions. I'd have big questions. So good for you, my guy. Happy to hear that you're excited about Deebo Samuel hopefully not going anywhere but staying in San Francisco. I'm hoping that's the case, Ant. Look, I think this is just everything that's going on right now with the Niners and the guys they're bringing in is great. The Trey Webb situation there, them discussing and talking to him. I haven't seen, Trey Webb really anywhere being brought up by a lot of different people. So it's an interesting way to look at this and what the 49ers value and what they're looking for. In the mock draft we did yesterday on War Room, there was no safety selection. There was no safety taken by the panel here. Like the GM Aponte and GM Chapman did not make a move for safety. They went other things and other needs. And while I don't necessarily love it because I think safety room should be addressed, it wouldn't be uncharacteristic of San Francisco to not be looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with the safety position right now. I don't see a clear starter opposite of Jimmy Ward. I think we got Jimmy Ward, and then we've got some conversation that needs to be had there. So I understand what Great One is saying and what Jay Elliott is saying and the everybody in chat about the 49ers potentially going and getting a safety. I'm not against that. I think the thing is I value Jalen Petrie at 61. He's the guy. Tariq Woolen, I would take him as a safety at 61. I think that would be huge value. Somebody that could potentially develop into an absolute all-pro safety in the league. I haven't heard anyone talking about him as safety. That's just my own personal opinion when I watch him. But I think Kirby Joseph, somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, seems very, very good. So the 49ers were wanting to move up from 93. They have the draft capital to do it. Move up from 93, into like 75 and then take him there after you've already taken someone at 61. I would be a proponent of that. So I do understand that conversation. I also understand the conversation about nickel corner. And if Kyler Gordon, for instance, is available at 61, you don't think twice, you pounce and you go ahead and you make that move. I know everyone is going on Marcus Jones, and that's great, but that's farther down. Kyler Gordon is valued higher because he's a really good football player.
If Kyler Gordon, right, is the guy there, and I don't think there's any question. I don't think either one of us, either myself or you, doesn't think that guy's slotting in immediately and starting.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think he would slide right in and start. And we still have questions about other free agents. Potentially the 49ers, depending on how the draft plays out, could also. Maybe they don't see the value in some of these guys. They could bring back Tart, bring back Jason Verrett at that moment, and then go with veteran route if they're not able to address it in the draft. So that could be something that we're paying attention to. Also, over the next couple weeks, they might also decide to work out money with Jason Verrett or Jaquiski Tart, and then go into the draft and you'll know more clear cut of what they're going to do. But I think those are the two areas I see that are most open for the 49ers to be able to go and draft somebody. On the defense, of course, defensive edge rushers always one, but that's more of a value pick than it is a real need. I just think nickel corner and safety is the need on that side of the football. And as far as the interior offensive line, there's a lot of really good players. And one of those first two picks, I would not be against taking an interior guy, especially 93, 105. Those would be really good spots. Dylan Parham, of course, Alec Lindstrom would be fantastic picks at those spots. But yeah, I like a lot of the interior guys too.
Love those interior guys, and there's a lot of options, a lot of ways the Niners can build this thing out. And David Campbell just said, is Tart still unsigned? And he is still unsigned. And look, I think Kyle Shanahan's comments recently, Ant, are something that we have to really dive into because he's talked about how he wants to be able to build teams. And he's talked about wanting them to do the draft earlier before free agency starts so that he knows what he's hit and what he's missed on, how he can build his team up by spending money in other places. That may be part of what they're doing right now. There's a hole at the safety spot. There's a hole at the nickel corner spot. There's some question marks in the O-line, question marks with your wide receiver room in terms of your top-end talent. He's waiting to kind of see and fill out the draft, right? Get through this draft process, see what happens, see what they hit on, see what guys they bring in and go, okay, hey, we didn't necessarily get a safety that I'm in love with. Hey, we didn't necessarily grab the nickel guy that I'm in love with. Time to go out there and let's reach out to Tart. Let's figure this out. Hey, let's reach out to Verrett. Let's figure this out. And then shore it up after post-draft, right? Once they kind of know what positions they filled, what they like, what they don't like, and where they're willing to take risks. Because the Niners have shown they will take risks. They will take risks at certain positions. Last year they took a risk with corner, and people can feel whatever way you want, but you ended up back in the NFC Championship game after it. They may be going a different route this year in terms of risk, in terms of a position. We just don't necessarily know what that is yet.
Yeah, and it was, part of the reason last night was so fun is because that's what the 49ers do. They do internal mock drafts. I mean, they have a lot of mock drafts, and they make selections. They try to go through all the different things that could possibly happen. Along the way, they might determine that they can't get all the players they need to get to fill those holes, and then make those moves before the draft, before they actually lose a little bit of leverage, right? Because if you have a hole and you have to fill it after the draft, you might lose a little leverage. So potentially they're going to do that, figure out where these guys are slotted, and then go out there and try to execute a plan. We know last year they tried to execute a plan on day 2, and it did not work out. They did not walk away with Walker Little, who they wanted to get, with Paulson Adebo, who they wanted to get. They thought those guys were going to be big time for them. And once again, a tackle that would have slid inside to play guard, potentially could have took over for Mike McGlinchey eventually, and Paulson Adebo, who could have slid in day 1 and started opposite of Emmanuel Mosley. They weren't able to execute their game plan. They ended up pivoting. They got Trey Sermon, who they expected to take with the 102 comp pick, and then they took Ambry Thomas with that 102 pick.
True.
But they had to execute a trade to get Sermon. So they're going to go through and formulate all the things, but you don't know how the moving parts are going to happen and what's going to consist of those. So you do have to have contingency plans. So I wonder what those are, and I wonder what their value is on their chart. They put these players in certain value, but also they have positional value as well. So if you have edge rusher and you have cornerback, or edge rusher and safety, you wonder what their value is. And they've proven before that it's edge rusher, so they might take a better player there.
True. And Jayla just said interior O-line does make sense to go with a vet instead of drafting one, at least at center.
Yeah, that's the curious thing, right? Is that's what I said to Chapman last night too, is the 49ers haven't shown willingness to take a young center and then train him. So far, what they've done is they've drafted offensive tackles and then Aaron Banks. Everybody else, the centers, Weston Richburg, big center signing. Alex Mack, big veteran center signing. This is just something they've done. You wonder if that starts or continues, or if Kyle Shanahan says, you know what, financially, it just makes more sense to get a center in here. But then you wonder, Alex, can they get a center in the rounds 2, 3, 4 that are, financially better for you? But do they make sense? Are they going to be able to start at the level of an Alex Mack, who is like a first-round pick?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is you just don't know. Lou said 49ers still shopping at the thrifty for warm wide receiver bodies. They're shopping at the thrifty everywhere. And this is the thing right now, is you just don't know. I think the Niners ideally, like J.C. Treader is still out there. I think the Niners would love that to be the signing. You put him at guard for your aunt as he sits there and waits to take over for Alex Mack. You just don't have the capital to be able to do something like that. It would be the best. That would be the best possible decision that would immediately shore up the O-line. You have nothing to worry about whether or not Banks develops or not. There's no pressure on the 49ers, right? Because you have Brunskill who can perform, you have Treader who can slide in, and you have Alex Mack there at the center. And if something happens to Alex Mack, now you're not worried because Treader can slide in at your center spot. It's not the end of the world. And you're deeper. You're a deeper O-line because of it. And if Banks develops and Jalen Moore develops, then you're in an even better spot than you were, before that signing. But the Niners don't have the cap space. So they have to be bargain shopping right now. They can sign as many people as they want as long as they're not over the top 51 contracts, because there's no repercussions. There's no punishments for them. Sign as many as they want up to 90 men. So the Niners that's what the options are right now, right? Get guys in here under the top 51 contracts and build out your roster that way, and keep that money free and available, because you have to keep it available to sign your draft picks that you're going to be selecting.
Yeah, I think the draft pick thing is going to come, but they're going to wait, right? They're going to restructure, they're going to extend somebody to free that up, or move Jimmy Garoppolo, and then that money's there.
Do you think, is there any world, Ant, where the Niners are thinking they can move Jimmy before the draft and not have to restructure any contract?
I think they're potentially, because it's only when they sign the draft picks, right? They're going to sign the draft picks later on, like before training camp. That's when they're going to sign the draft picks. You're not concerned about that right now. Well, you're right now, you're just operating to build your 90-man roster. You know that you're going to have to address some of these needs in the draft. And then once Jimmy Garoppolo's contract is figured out, whether that is, him moving on or him staying, whatever it is, then you go ahead and make a move, potentially kick the can down the road with some of these contracts. But right now, there's not a huge push because they don't feel that there's a need to sign a big player that can start. So they're bringing in guys that fit the 90-man roster or potentially, fit a void as a rotational piece. And that is something that was brought up by Great One. He said, if the 49ers sign Kemoko Turray, do you think they'll take a D-line player in the later rounds and go for safety and O-line with the first 2 picks? I do believe if they sign him, it will definitely signal a point where they might not go edge rusher unless one falls completely in their lap. That would be an absolutely crazy signing. I like the signing. I watched film of him, and I think he would be dynamic as an edge rusher. I think he would be a nice rotational piece for sure. The question is, who's going to make this roster and who's not on that defensive line? You would have edge rushers galore, and minus somebody just falling in your lap that's a dynamic edge rusher, I think you would look to go a different direction. So potentially one of these guys that we're talking about every single day may not be on the roster because Jordan Willis, Kerry Hyder, Amenahue, Nick Bosa, Ebukam, that's 5 already. And now you're going to add potentially this guy. Like, to me, that is 6 guys is outrageous edge rusher talent, not to mention D Ford is still under contract now.
And how many of those guys are under the age of 26?
A lot of them.
Including Kemoko.
Yeah.
I mean, is it Kemoko or Kemoko?
I'm not sure.
I'm going to go with, hold on. There's a phonetic spelling here. Hold on. Let's see, Cutback Crew. Kemoko. Kemoko. Okay. Kemoko Turray.
Okay.
Kemoko Turray. 26 years old, Ant. 5.5 sacks last season. 4 in his rookie campaign. This is a former second-round pick. Well, again, a lot of upside, a lot of potential with this guy. The film looked pretty good as well when I was taking a look. I glanced at film today once I saw that they were interested in looking at this. It's interesting, though, because he must not be getting what he thought he could get out in the open market. He must not be feeling he can get the contract he was hoping to get.
Well, he had and a great one is bringing up, he had 5.5 sacks and only 27% of snaps. He also had an injury at the end of 2019, and then he's had another injury-plagued season along the way.
There you go. Then.
So he hasn't had consistent snaps. The thing is you see the potential of what he could be. When you watch the film, you see that right now all he's got is a straight arm. That's all he's got, a speed rush and a straight arm. That's it. There's a lot of things that he could work on. That long arm is great, but imagine what he could do working with Tapp and Chris Kasarik, potentially develop his game, get more moves, and then really be able to bend the corner. I think potential-wise, watching his film, I thought he had dynamic ability, maybe even better than Jordan Willis. The question is, what are they going to do with somebody like Kerry Hyder in that situation? Now, I know all these guys are really cost-effective, but what do? Does he make the roster? Does he become an interior defensive lineman? Do the 49ers just go small on the inside? Maybe. So that's one thing to keep an eye on as they continue to bring players in.
It is something to keep an eye on, Ant. It is definitely something to keep an eye on. Look, I saw Lou said, Ant and Alex, that's my issue with the 49ers approach to free agency. They haven't acquired Jack for the O-line to help the success for Trey. It's all hope and conjecture and no known veteran commodity. I get that. Brad's saying too, is Treader a bad locker room guy? That's why he's still unsigned, or is it about money? I think it's more about money there. I think with the 49ers, this is one of the biggest issues for fans right now is they look at the possibilities, right? All the possibilities, all the things that could be if the money were available and you didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo under contract. All the people you could have brought in. And the Niners are looking at it differently. They're not looking at what could have been. They're looking at what they already have. This was a team that was 3 points away from making it back to the Super Bowl. You're that. You brought back a lot of pieces. You let some guys go, yes, but some of those guys, a lot of fans wanted out, right? No more K'Wan Williams. Jaquiski Tartt's a bum. He dropped a pick, right? He's got get rid of it. It's fine. Langston Tomlinson, yes, you wanted to bring back. Yes, DJ Jones, you wanted to bring back, but you couldn't afford it. And now you went out and paid a big corner. So you addressed one of the biggest issues and biggest needs. The Niners are sitting there looking at this rotation right now and going, our strength last year was the D-line rotation. We've kept that a strength. We've made moves to keep that a positive. Now we've addressed corner and fixed a big hole that we had with this team. Why aren't we still in a position to be one of the best teams in the NFC?
I think defensively, you're right. And they're possibly a nickel corner signing. They're a Jason Verrett, Jaquiski Tart away from getting this thing done, or a Jalen Petrie, Marcus Jones away from getting this thing done on defense. Fair. As far as the offense goes, I understand what Lou is saying. You're definitely talking about hope because your hope is that the investment that the 49ers have made over the last several years into the offensive line through the draft has developed. So that means Laken Tomlinson is gone. Did they draft and develop Aaron Banks, and now he's potentially ready to go? Jalen Moore, they drafted with a 5th-round pick, and potentially he's ready to go. You're hopeful that Colton McKivitz is better and not the player that got put on the practice squad last year as he didn't make the 53-man roster.
Crazy.
So you have these guys that you are hopeful for. Banks, the ultimate one, 2nd-round pick. That's a big-time investment. When you're talking about guys who are getting invested, like Creed Humphrey last year, pick 61 for Kansas City, ends up being an all-pro. So, it's one of those things where, yeah, you're hopeful. We don't know for sure. There's no way to know for sure. The only people that have a really good idea about this are in that front office. Accurate. And I think we have to look at the fact that they're either unwilling because they don't have the financial ability or don't feel the need to bring in another player because they feel a Banks or a Jalen Moore is going to be ready. And I do believe that inside that building, there's a different belief on Daniel Brunskill than is seen outside of the building.
Agreed with you on
I
that.
think that they feel completely confident with Daniel Brunskill playing play in and play out as a starter in their interior offensive line, at least for another year. And I think on the outside, everyone's screaming, that's not good. We don't want that. And I think that is a difference between what the actual belief is in the locker room, so they don't feel they need to make any move, and what people on the outside believe they need to do.
Fair. It's felt like that for the last few years, in all honesty, including last season after the move for Aaron Banks. Everyone was clamoring for Banks to be the starter, and we were sitting here going, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, and I was steadfast that I didn't see this happening at the beginning of the year. Could it change towards the later portions of the season? Absolutely, because that's a lot of time we're talking about from OTAs to the end of the season in which Aaron Banks has time to develop. But after that first day at Levi's, it was like, this dude it's not close. It's Brunskill's job. It is Brunskill can only lose this job. He can't win this job because it's already his. Until we see something from Banks or Brunskill takes a nosedive, it's going to be his. I think this coaching staff in this front office is very comfortable with where he is. I think that's why they offered him the tender very quickly into the free agency period. Yes, they haven't necessarily signed him right now. He hasn't signed it yet, but that may be because he's trying to get a bigger contract or bigger money coming on the table and forcing the hand of San Francisco to try and match.
Yeah, and I completely understand people's question marks with Aaron Banks. Because truth be told, Alex, from what we saw of Banks in training camp and at that open practice as well, he was not better than Colton McKivitz.
We even heard people say, remember, we were hearing content creators, up there talk about how they needed to hype up Aaron Banks to get this conversation going because as of right now, Brunskill was dominating. It was Brunskill's job.
Yeah, there was definitely a conversation that they were going to do that and create that narrative. But right, Mike, I'm not out of line here, but Colton McKivitz was outplaying Aaron Banks, and in fact, if Aaron Banks was a 2nd-round pick, he would have been the one that didn't make the 53-man roster.
It's a good chance.
But
do you think that's an interesting thing? I didn't think about that at the time, but you're not wrong. So I didn't think Colton McKivitz was playing that bad.
Colton McKivitz definitely wasn't doing what they wanted. They wanted him to play right tackle. He was struggling at right tackle. They moved Tom Compton outside, moved him to left guard.
But he played better at left guard.
He did play better at left guard, but you're not going to turn on a 2nd-round pick. At that point, there's just too much value. You can't cut him. Fair. Somebody's going to claim him and try to develop him.
That's accurate. Yeah. And look, Renee, I've seen you a couple times in the chat now talking about Deebo. You want to get a conversation started on Deebo. We opened the show with Deebo. It was the first question when we came on.
Well, he's saying, he deleted more stuff today.
Well, yeah, he's been deleting stuff consistently.
Well, I think he's not deleting. I think he's hiding.
Probably what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the same thing Kyler Murray did.
Yeah.
The only difference is I think Deebo Samuel is trolling. I legitimately think he's trolling.
Well, it didn't work out for Kyler Murray.
Correct. And Deebo also doesn't seem like that type of person, like to be upset about the contract negotiations with the Niners and then therefore hide social media posts.
Well, the one thing we got to know, or we got to remember, is this front office is completely transparent with their players. John Lynch has a really good, working relationship with agents and with players. Kyle Shanahan is friends with Deebo Samuel. He will have a really good idea of what Deebo is doing. And let's be honest, when Kyle Shanahan gets involved in negotiations, it usually goes the player's way. Raheem Mostert was upset, was going to hold out, wanted more money. Kyle Shanahan got involved. He got more money. So if Kyle Shanahan believes that this is something that has to happen, he will walk into that office and say, John Lynch, make it happen. But right now, we're in April. This is not the time that it has to happen.
No.
Just because all these other deals are happening right now doesn't mean it has to happen. And in fact, the 49ers should make sure that they do wait, because all that momentum will slow down a little bit. Right now, all these contracts are coming off the books. Just push the pause button. When it happens, it'll happen at the right time. They'll get Deebo Samuel under contract. But if I'm okay if they have to wait, this is from a 49er standpoint, not Deebo. I want Deebo to get all the money he could possibly get.
As much as possible.
He deserves it.
He does.
But from a team standpoint, they should wait and not overpay him, even if they have to go through the season and end up irritating him, because you have to do what's best for your business. So I understand both sides of it.
Correct. And look, at the end of the day, too, this Deebo situation and his comments in the past also have to weigh on people's minds with this.
Yeah.
Yes, he's trying to get paid as much money as humanly possible. Yes, the 49ers are not trying to overpay, but this may be more about media personnel being all up in his business and following his every move and constantly talking about him and him just being sick of it, more than it is anything else. So before anyone jumps to one conclusion, puts the cart in front of the horse, how much can we get for Deebo Samuel in a trade? Just pump the brakes here. Let this thing play out a little bit. Let's get more information and actually find out what's going on, because the Niners don't leak, and they also don't necessarily come out and put a bunch of false narratives out in the media and with people in terms of what exactly is going on or not. They will give the truth, and sometimes it's only a portion of the truth, or it's only the truth in this context out through this lens. You only they reached out to court, like last year when they were reaching out to teams about quarterbacks. It wasn't because they were trying to trade for a quarterback so much as it was they were trying to figure out who's trying to get quarterbacks so we know where to move in the draft to make sure we get ours.
And which they did. And
that's exactly what
I will answer it like this. Whatever Tyreek Hill got, that trade from Kansas City to the Dolphins, that's your starting point for Deebo Samuel.
Correct.
That is the haul. That's the starting point, because there is no one like Deebo Samuel. Tyreek Hill's major skill is speed. Deebo Samuel, major skill is everything. So that's the starting point. And I know we got a super chat from Jag.
We do. Jag with a $5 super chat. The reason we lost the NFC Championship game was because we lost control of the line of scrimmage. If we could have run, we would have had when we had to, we would have won the Super Bowl.
That is true. Here's one of the things to take into account, and this is one of the Trey Lance effects that I think we're going to see, is with Jimmy Garoppolo at the quarterback, and especially a limited Jimmy Garoppolo with a shoulder and thumb injury, but a Jimmy Garoppolo overall. I think everyone understands and believes this, that they're able to bring extra players in the box. Weddle was just sitting in the box the entire game, daring Jimmy Garoppolo and this offense to go ahead and beat him. And even Deebo Samuel said it at the end of the year, we couldn't do that. Trey Lance will not give them that opportunity once he develops and is able to understand the offense completely. I think he's going to. Because you're going to be able to stretch the field. You're going to be able to get the ball down the field. He has that big arm. He has that threat. The threat of the big-time play down the field will create opportunities for more run lanes. Also, Trey Lance will be tremendous running the read option. It doesn't mean he has to keep. It doesn't mean he has to have those carries. Nope. What he's going to do is occupy. So the next time that Little is sitting there on the outside, like with the Rams, and he sees that read option go, he can run down the line with Elijah Mitchell. Trey Lance will pull and go around the outside. Will Bobby Wagner be able to run Trey Lance down? I doubt it. Not a guy that runs, close to 22 miles per hour. Sure. However, if he stays on Trey Lance and you get that, now you get a lane for Elijah Mitchell and for these running backs to be able to cut up. So it does create more opportunities in the run game with Trey Lance because he has the threat of the deep ball and the threat of the read option run.
True. It's true. Look, there's a couple of really good questions here, and a couple of really good ones.
Let's get into it.
Great one. Would you guys be okay with drafting Darian Kennard, offensive tackle, at 61 if he's available, not at 61?
And is he playing offensive tackle or is he playing offensive guard?
He's going to be playing guard.
Because at value-wise, if he's playing offensive tackle, I understand taking a tackle at 61. If he's playing offensive guard, I'm not sure. And I question also how much different of a player Kennard is compared to Banks, right? And we've talked about Banks' fit in the San Francisco 49ers scheme. They talked about ultimately he wasn't the best fit, but they thought they could mold him into the fit.
I don't think you can mold Darian Kennard into the fit.
I don't know if you can either. I think there's some things there. So that's an interesting one. It's not like I hate the player, but I don't ultimately love him in the Niners system. I think there's a lot of systems he fits better in.
There are a lot of better systems that he fits in, and I don't know if San Francisco's that one, and I don't think that's the option there at 61. Lou said, so then is it your position that the value is greater holding on to Jimmy G and sacrificing $16 million net than one or two needed veteran presences on the team? No, but that's not the argument to be made here, right? I mean, the argument here isn't to be made that we think one way or the other. The argument to be made here is this is what the San Francisco 49ers have decided. This is the reality. This is what's happened.
Yeah. They
have decided that holding on to Jimmy Garoppolo is in fact that. John and Kyle have made a lot of good decisions, and people can say, oh, they've made some bad ones. I would argue here, the Niners have been in 2 of the last 3 NFC Championship games because of the amount of good decisions that have been made by this front office and coaching staff. So we can question it all we'd like. We can not like it all we'd like. I could want to do things differently, and maybe I do want to do things differently, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I want, it doesn't matter what you want, it doesn't matter what anyone wants, right? The Niners have said Jimmy Garoppolo's value on this roster is greater than, at this point in time, this moment right now, greater than that additional money and being able to fill those holes.
Yeah, I think they looked at it and they see that they got a nice, it's a nice Chevy Suburban. It's a newer one. It's been lowered. It's got airbags. It's got a nice air ride.
It's got some neon underneath in the undercarriage.
Yeah, it's going nice. And then, they're getting ready to trade this and somebody's willing to take it. And then all of a sudden you have a blown radiator and now it doesn't run. And so teams are like, no, I'm not going to give you what you're asking for it. I'm not going to give you that amount. Well, the 49ers are waiting to fix that radiator. And once that radiator is fixed, they believe they're going to get the value that they thought they were going to get. That's the equivalent of what's happening with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Fair. And Lou says, I'm asking your position.
Oh, I would have already moved off from Jimmy Garoppolo.
I would have too.
I would have freed up the money. I would have made a couple other moves, but I'm not the general manager. I don't get paid for it. So, I mean, I think that I kind of was making that clear when Jimmy wasn't traded, and then it would look like the whole trade market had dried up because I don't see anyone besides Carolina. So I would have been willing to make some sort of a move.
I wouldn't have been stubborn on a second and something else. If someone was willing to offer just a second or someone was willing to offer a third and something else, you and I both would have ran and taken that at the time because for us, it would have been more important to free up said money, knowing that we draft really well in the 3rd and 5th rounds, and I trust my front office, trust myself, I trust our scouting department to make those picks and for us to find some impact players there, have that additional draft capital right now, and have the money to be able to go sign some bigger name guys.
Another thing to take into account is John Lynch said he was never officially offered a deal for Jimmy Garoppolo. So there's no official deal. The other thing is Kyle Shanahan said they were close to getting something done and getting what they wanted, but then Jimmy Garoppolo came out with the shoulder surgery, and that torpedoed it. So maybe it was a circumstance thing, a time thing that didn't work out in their favor, and now they're holding out. But, I mean, yeah, I think potentially you would have liked to have that money and to bring in veteran players like Lou is saying, because adding a Treader, for instance, would be really nice for your offensive line.
A Treader, a Stephon Gilmore. I mean, all of those things would still be possible. But all those things are possible if you're off that contract.
Yeah, I think so. But right now, realistically, I think that contract is what's budgeted for Deebo Samuel. So whenever that contract officially gets moved, that's when you're going to see that money for Deebo Samuel. And you also would have to count, if you cut him, on Jimmy Garoppolo signing with another team for $8+ million to get that money back in 2023.
Fair. Renee, too, speaking of Deebo Samuel, what do you guys think is going to be the contract for Deebo? 25 to 30 million a year? You and I were talking about this a little bit pre-show. It's getting dangerously close to being in that $30 million range, but ideally it's looking like around, 28 million a year, somewhere in there is what that top end number is going to be that Deebo is going to be probably pushing for, that maybe the Niners have to settle for. They may be able to get away with a contract that averages out to about $20 million a year with about $7.5–8 million and every season built into that contract in incentives. That ends up being, close to, 60–80 million guaranteed.
I think that's what happens is they end up giving him less money per year, but more guaranteed money. To keep that money down to possibly $25 million, you throw more guaranteed money. Stephon Gilmore got $70 million. Stephon Diggs got $70 million guaranteed. So Deebo, you're going to get $80 million guaranteed, but we want to keep your number lower. And then also the way that Parag, works this deal out to be able to have the money not completely cripple them early in the deal. And as a salary cap keeps going up when the collective bargaining agreement, then you have that money come up. Also, that will allow you to not only renegotiate with Deebo Samuel down the line, but potentially move on from him if he gets too pricey. So I think it will be somewhat backloaded, but I think that would probably be the best way to work it. But then again, I'm not Parag, and I don't come up with all these magical ways to handle contracts, but I think he'll figure it out.
I think so as well, and I'm not actually as worried about that as I am other things. At least let Jimmy get healthy before they release him. If that is the only option, you save $7 million on that injury clause, said David Campbell. Megan just asked, do you guys think Baker will still land somewhere? I don't know. I know the Browns have said that, they're going to hold on to him for now, and they foresee a scenario in which he potentially could have to play some games. And if something were to happen to Deshaun Watson and him get suspended for a significant amount of time, is Baker going to be okay with that? Because he seems to be the one that's the most disgruntled out of everybody.
I think he might get moved on the draft. I mean, player moves in the draft day seem legitimate. I think he could get moved in day 2 of the draft, potentially day 3, and they'll move on, because I think they would potentially go a different route than Baker Mayfield, because Baker Mayfield being on that roster and in that locker room might not be a good fit. So I think at some point he will get moved, but for what? And then in that case, if Deshaun Watson is out, could in fact the Cleveland Browns be interested in bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo for that 1 year and letting him roll?
Could. I think it really comes down to how they feel things are going to play out, and with the Deshaun Watson situation, and that situation is far from over. The court of public opinion pressure is going to be coming down on the Browns, and because the attorney is putting out videos from depositions and things of that nature, and they're really putting pressure on the NFL to do something. So there is still definitely a possibility the NFL could come back and essentially bring either a full year or 6 games or half of a season suspension down to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, potentially. Something could happen, and that's why they prepared for it. That's why his contract is only going to count against like a little over $1 million. So they're definitely prepared for it. Their decisions are their decisions. I don't really want to get into the Cleveland making their moves. Only Baker Mayfield, because it could potentially affect how the 49ers move Jimmy Garoppolo, or if they do move Jimmy Garoppolo.
Fair. Donald Johnson just said, I'm starting to think the Niners will keep Jimmy G until his contract expires.
Potentially. I mean, and if they do, he's going to garner them a 3rd down compensatory pick. The question is that $25 million you would free up from him worth more than a 3rd round compensatory pick? I believe it is. But will they have that value on it? Maybe they want to roll into the year and just believe that if something happens to Trey, they can roll with Jimmy. But I think that's a very expensive way to go about it.
That would be a very expensive way to go about it. And Brad Jones here, not so fast, my guy. He said, and Ant, you see Brandon Cook signed an extension with the Texans. Not so fast. Yeah. Not so fast. Breaking news from a source.
Yeah, it does look like Brandon Cooks is going to sign. I did get the text message that he was going to sign.
There you go.
It wasn't officially official, but
when the news first broke, it wasn't officially official.
Yeah, but it does appear that he's going to get that. And the funny thing is last week I saw that it was going on Twitter that the Texans were seeking a 2nd round pick. Well, they had been offered a 2nd round pick from the Green Bay Packers, and they weren't willing to move on from Cooks for that. So good for Brandon Cooks getting an extension, but yeah, that hurts me. It cuts me deep. I love the speed receiver.
Well, at least he's not going to Green Bay, Ant.
Yeah, exactly. Him staying in the AFC is great.
Yes.
And I do like Davis Mills, so there you go.
Davis Mills got himself a quarterback, and now the Green Bay Packers will have to address wide receiver in the 1st round, right? They're just going to have to do it.
Yeah. Financially, it makes a lot of sense for him staying in Texas as well. He's going to pay a lot less money in taxes.
That's right. That's right, Ant. The way they utilize Deebo, I wouldn't anticipate him being healthy much past 4 years, says Lou.
If you continue to use him the same way that you used him last year, you're right. Longevity-wise, his body will not be able to take the rigors of that continual contact. But I think that is part of the reason they'll have to scale it back and then bring it in at certain times. So certain games, when it's a matchup that you like, use Deebo in the backfield more. Or when you get into the playoffs, when you're not holding anything back, you go ahead and get after it. I think those are potential. That's also why I do believe, and I know everyone hates when you bring up his name, but when they brought in Jalen Hurd, the thought was having 2 of those guys that can do everything is part of it. And Jalen Hurd, I believe, was actually intended to do the role that Deebo Samuel played last year, but he couldn't stay healthy. And because he couldn't stay healthy, Kyle Shanahan was never able to use the offense he wanted to use until he was able to use Deebo in that role last year. So I think he would have had 2 guys, but Jalen Hurd wasn't able to do it. And now there's just not another guy like that out there.
No, there really truly isn't. Dan Buckle said they could trade him right before the season starts and be on the hook for $7 million. It could depend on his recovery. They would have the cap next year. They're not going to let that cap number roll over. If they trade Jimmy Garoppolo, that cap is going to get spent right now. They're going to take some of that money and probably use it towards a Deebo Samuel extension.
Yeah, you would think it would be used to either re-sign Deebo Samuel or to re-sign Nick Bosa.
Yes.
Potentially they could use it on free agents if they're available. but you also want to go into the season with some operating money just in case you need to bring players in because of injury
or trade,
or you need to make a trade like Emmanuel Sanders. So they normally like to keep $6 or $7 million free. That way they can make in-season moves. So that they're going to have to free up money at some point, whether that's Jimmy Garoppolo's contract coming off the books or them working out some sort of restructure or extension with other players. Something has to be done. $7 million potentially to draft picks, and then everything else going to other players you need to use to fill out the roster.
True. Yeah, that's what it feels like is going to be happening. Brad saying, I reckon the Packers are taking Watson. It feels like the Packers are, but keep in mind the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round in been a minute, Ant. It's been a hot minute. I don't know the exact number of years, but it's been a while since they've taken a skill position player that early in the first. Will they do it this year? It would make sense for them to do it, but maybe there's a philosophy here and they won't pull the trigger.
I think they will. I think they're going to get receivers. I think they're going to get multiple receivers.
You think they'll go two?
Yeah, because I mean they lost Scantling. He's gone. I don't even know if they re-signed Alan Lazard or not, but they've got some weaknesses and holes there. But they definitely got to replace MVS. So going out and getting someone like Christian Watson would make a lot of sense.
Devontae Adams being gone too.
Yeah, Devontae Adams is gone. Their wide receiver core needs an absolute rehaul, and I think that's why they were offering a second-round pick for Brandon Cooks, and they just weren't willing to move off of it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. A great one. Just asked, three-way trade. Niners, Browns, and Seattle. Baker to Seattle, Jimmy to the Browns. Niners get a third and a fourth. I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a very feasible move. If the 49ers could make it, we'll see if all parties would be interested.
And we get to see Baker twice a year? Sounds glorious.
Yeah, I don't hate seeing Baker there. I mean, as much as I don't mind seeing Drew Lock, I don't mind seeing Baker either.
No, I think Nick Bosa's happy either way.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa's a happy gentleman. Do you think we will move up higher in the second? Robert, I think Ant and I both would love that to be the case because there are some guys like Arnold Ebiketie that we're absolutely enamored with, that we absolutely love, and we know the Niners have to enjoy him too. Ant, they went to that pro day. They went there for a reason. There was a handful of Penn State guys they wanted to look at, but Ebiketie had to be one of them. They may want to. I would love them to. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but good gosh almighty, Ant, do I want that. I would love them to move up, 10 spots or so, get themselves into the 50 range, the high 40s, and get themselves an Arnold Ebiketie.
I think it's pretty likely that they're going to come up and get somebody because I think they want to get an impact player that's going to help their team, and they do not intend on picking 9 times. They just don't need that capital. They have 11 picks the next year. That's 20 picks of capital to be able to use, and I think they would like to get into the 40 range, somewhere in there. We'll see what it's going to take to get up there and get it done, but I mean, they're going to be thinking about players and compensatory picks they're going to be getting in the future. If they do have Jimmy Garoppolo in the contract, they're going to have another third-round compensatory pick. So coupling 61 with 105 and potentially a compensatory pick in 2023, they could move up into the 40s and go ahead and get a impact player that could help the team in 2022 and beyond. When you start getting into the later rounds, you don't know if those pieces are going to have as much impact on your current roster. I think they're still in a win-now mode, while building to win at least one championship in Trey Lance's rookie pay scale.
Makes sense, Ant. It makes sense. And look, Cutback Crew, we're going to still be taking your questions right here, but I got to plug the likes. Ant, I got to plug the likes and the subscribes. You got to make sure you subscribe if you have not already. If you're watching this for the very first time, you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss any live streams, any coverage of the San Francisco 49ers that we got coming your way. You don't want to miss Sunday night Cutback chats as well, which are a lot of fun, Ant. And they don't want to miss War Room, more War Room on this channel. If you missed yesterday's, make sure you after we're done here with the live stream, click back, check out yesterday's War Room stream, and that was with John Chapman and Jason Aponte. It was a lot of fun, great conversation, and some interesting trades and things happening in that War Room draft. They're not going to hate that. They're going to absolutely love every second of it.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and then a lot of the channel members jumped into the aftermath as well as stream, and we had a conversation about a lot of the picks and everything, and different moves that maybe the Cutback Crew would have rather went in the direction they would have rather went, including Jay Ellie saying, "Hey, I actually believe the fan controlled mock draft. I want to see it side by side. Maybe it's a little bit better." So I think it was a really good conversation, and it was a different angle of handling it from the fans to what John Chapman and Jason Aponte did. So yeah, it was a good conversation. I like that, but. There's a lot of things going on right now with the Niners, and I wonder how this thing is going to shake up as we get closer to the draft. They're going to fill holes with veteran players on really, really cheap deals, or if those veteran players are going to have to wait until after the draft.
Or, Ant, they're going to actually do the thing that none of us think they're going to do right now, which is cut Jimmy Garoppolo. It doesn't feel like that is an option that the Niners are willing to even entice. But, push may come to shove, and you may get past the draft and start getting closer to OTAs, and the Niners are finally just like, you know what? This ain't worth it. This ain't worth it. We want to be able to build this team, and we feel like we need to go get some of these type of players, and we feel the money is close enough now that we can eat some of that money by cutting Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to cut bait on him. I mean, the one thing about John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they're pretty steadfast in their beliefs. I think it would take a lot for them to be able to move off him, and I think it would be more in July. And there could be potentially players available in July when he gets cleared, because last year there was
a lot, and there's still a lot of guys available still right now.
Yeah, Justin Houston, Melvin Ingram were both available last year in training camp. Right now, Tyrann Mathieu flirting around with New Orleans, but him, Stephon Gilmore, there's other Jadeveon Clown, even though I don't want to see him in San Francisco, he's available as well, and Ndamukong Suh. Gronk doesn't even know if he's going to play football, so there's a lot of guys available that could potentially be there for the 49ers after the draft, potentially in July when Jimmy Garoppolo got cleared, that then they could free up a full $25 million to be able to bring a player in.
Ndamukong Suh's still available, man.
Yeah.
He could still reunite with Chris Cassari.
He could.
Again.
He definitely wants to go back to Tampa Bay, though.
I mean...
The things he was saying on Twitter, he definitely wants to go back there.
Not surprised by that. Ant, low taxes as well in Florida, in a shocking turn of events.
Yeah, Florida, Texas.
Most of your money.
Florida, Texas, Nevada have huge advantages in signing free agents.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it also helps, too, when your team's good.
And California and New York, not so much.
No, and that's part of the problem for the Giants, I think, and the Giants and the Jets, man. You got terrible teams, and the tax rate's ridiculously high. Why would you want to go
it's
there?
It's like Tyreek Hill said, never the Jets. It was never the Jets.
Never the Jets, and it was never going to be the Jets. Brad just said Deebo is training with Melvin Ingram, so there you go. Marvin Rose saying, sign Gilmore. I feel you.
We're big proponents of Stephon Gilmore.
Feel you, Cutback.
If the 49ers decided to go a Stephon Gilmore route, they don't have the money right now. They'd have to find a way to free up money. But potentially Stephon Gilmore, Travarius Ward with Emmanuel Mosley in the slot would be an absolute savage cornerback room. You could play man coverage. You can definitely do a lot of things that you want to do. Press man would be fantastic. So, yeah, I think that would be a solid move. But it doesn't seem like Stephon Gilmore is ready to come off the amount he wants. So that's never going to be in the 49ers price range. So I don't know if that's an actual realistic possibility.
Oh, it doesn't feel like it. It really, really doesn't. And Ant, we're sitting at 54 likes right now. I absolutely love Fred Warner number of likes. I'm going to be greedy, though. Get us 3 more. Let's get to Dre Greenlaw. Let's get to Dre Greenlaw number of likes, Ant. Look, a lot of things have been happening with the 49ers all offseason long, and they've been doing a lot of different things, and they're still making moves. Malik Turner was another guy that they had brought in for workouts. They decided to sign Marcus Johnson and not Malik Turner, but they're exhausting all of their options. They're looking at these veteran guys, looking at, it seems like the young guys. They're not bringing in a lot of older veteran guys over the age of 30, and it's guys in their mid-20s that they're looking at that are also going to be dirt cheap as well. They're trying to make sure this roster stays fairly young, is going to be inexpensive, and you know what? As much as I don't love it, I also don't necessarily hate it.
Yeah, also signing a player that doesn't have as many accrued seasons means he's going to be cheaper against the salary cap. You're just not going to pay these guys as much, and 49ers know that. So they're being very strategic with who they sign and what that money is going to look like. And they've been continually being able to bring these guys in under contracts with having just $2 million in free cap space. So this has been something they've worked on and executed at a pretty high level right now as they look to fill out their 90-man roster. And it appears all sights are set, potentially on the draft. I mean, the fact that they brought in the edge rusher this week was a little bit of a surprise because that's someone that I wonder if they can get under that $2 million rate. I'm not so sure they can, which means they're willing to make a move there. What is the corresponding move? Do they have to restructure another player? Potentially. So I'm going to keep an eye on that.
You're going to have to, Ant. You're going to have to. And Lou just said, isn't the stadium in New Jersey for the Jets? With a nice little smiley face afterwards, and he's not wrong. Great one. How about we trade Armstead for a second and third instead of Deebo? Then we can draft Fedarian Mathis. The problem is you're going to eat up, I think it's something like $60 million, $50 million in dead cap.
Yeah, the dead cap for Armstead is ridiculous.
It's huge.
He's not an actual trade target. And I don't think the 49ers want to because they like what they saw from him playing inside in the 3-tech last year.
Accurate.
He was dynamic and he really stabilized that run defense. So I don't think this is something that they'd even entertain because I believe they think they're getting the value of that contract that he has on the field in his play. So I don't think they're ready to move off him anytime soon.
Very true, Ant. It's very, very true. Even in gentlemen said, Android user, how you doing, my guy?
Yeah.
Hopefully well. Look, everything runs through the O-line, and it only has one real starter with an older starter and an older center, and you're going to have a rookie quarterback. That, to me, is the most important thing at this point, said Dan Buckles. And Dan Buckles, the Cutback crew, agreed with you. I don't know if you were there for the fan-controlled mock draft on Monday, but the Cutback crew went, 3 O-linemen in said draft? They really addressed the O-line.
Yeah, they did. I was trying to remember. I think they did get Lindstrom. Was
it Lindstrom? I'm going to pull it up right now.
Yeah, I believe they went Lindstrom. I know they went Parham. I know they did get him. So, yeah, they were definitely executing, getting offensive linemen. And you don't know if those guys are actually going to be able to make the roster. If you go in on a position...
So, it wasn't Lindstrom, but it was Cam Jurgens.
Okay, Cam Jurgens.
Kellen Dyche, and Dylan Parham.
Okay.
So those 3.
So, basically a center, a guard, and a tackle.
Accurate.
So, the Cutback crew definitely went after that. I think that realistically, I think 3 is a lot of offensive linemen to take in a draft because I don't know if those 3 guys can make the roster. Not that they're not all good players, because they are. But this offensive line has a lot of good football players right now, currently. And I don't think any one of those 3 guys would start in year 1. So that's what you're looking at. If you're looking at these guys being players for you in 2023, if you're looking to build for the future, that's what it's going to be. But none of these guys that you just mentioned are gonna help Trey Lance in year 1. And even with an Alec Lindstrom, as much as I love him, he's not starting at center.
No.
So if he's moving to guard, and is he going to beat out Banks? Is he going to beat out Brunskill? That would be the question. If not, it's a 2023 investment, which is okay. Just so everyone knows, improving the offensive line this year may not happen in the draft at 61.
No, it may have to happen in free agency.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to make a trade with Jimmy Garoppolo and potentially free up some of that money. Megan just asked, hypothetical here. If the Niners were to trade Jimmy on draft day and get, let's say, a 2nd and a 3rd round pick, who would you guys want to go after with the extra picks?
The realistic possibility is, or realistic thing about that is, one of those picks will be in 2022, one of them probably in 2023. I think if...
What do you think would be more likely? A 3rd this year and a 2nd next year?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would be a 3rd this year and a 2nd next year. And in that situation, I'm taking that 3rd, I'm putting it together with something else, and I'm coming up. In that case, the added capital, I'm going to get a Christian Watson. I'm going to get an Arnold Ebiketie. I'm going to get a Jalen Petrie. I want an impact player. And it doesn't even have to be Petrie per se. But I've told you this before. I want an impact edge rusher. So Nick Benito, for instance. I want a impact wide receiver. John Mechie, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce. I want to walk away with somebody that can dynamically change the offense. And then later on, that's when I get Danny Gray. So I think that those are guys that I'd be interested in. But I would be really aggressive because I want to walk away with 4 or 5 guys in this draft, not 9.
I would prefer 4 or 5. And ideally, and 4 or 5 as close as possible to the top 150.
And Freak Stump says we won't even sniff a 2nd. That's why it would have to be next year, because the way that the draft works...
And it would most likely... You're talking about... The most likely that trade too, and is going to come down to if you got like a 3rd, and that next year 3rd, it would be like a 3rd that could escalate to a 2nd.
Well, potentially. But the way that the trade value works, a 2nd next year is actually worth a 3rd in value. So it would actually be the same value as 2 3rds, because that's how they look at it. A future draft, a 2nd's not worth a 2nd. So like when you trade for 2 firsts, that 2nd first is not worth as much as the 1st currently this season.
Well, because you also don't know where that pick is going to be.
Correct. You don't know where that's going to be. So it is a different value for it. So it wouldn't actually be a 2nd round pick value. It'd be a 2 3rd value.
Aaron, we just hit 57 likes, so Cutback crew.
Yeah, that's fine. Freaks up, it might not happen. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure. I'm not even saying that's the value for Jimmy Garoppolo. Just that's what was brought up, so that's what we're conversating on. But I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know what that value is going to be. Because I don't even know what teams are even interested in Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. It seems like it's maybe the Panthers, but I don't see a real market for him.
It's hard right now. It's hard to imagine it. Andrew just said, aren't Jimmy's $27 million automatically going to Deebo? At this point, it would feel like most of it is.
Well, it couldn't be 27.
It's not going to be actually 27. It's 25.
It's 25 million, yeah.
So it would feel like most of that 25 would go towards Deebo Samuel. It feels like most of it would. Android user, but Niners have to come to an agreement. Some of that money's going to have to go towards first-round picks if it happened during the draft, or not first-round picks, but your picks from that current draft class that you're going to be signing, which is also part of the reason why ideally you'd like to have less guys that you're signing. If you only have 5 or 6 guys that you're bringing in from this class instead of 9, you're in a better spot. That's less money being taken up across the board.
Yeah, it depends on where those guys are. So
Also
of course,
true.
if you start getting a couple
Two seconds,
2/3, then potentially. But yeah, I think that you're wanting to be strategic, find impact players that can either help your team right now, which is what you want to do at the top of your draft, but then some guys that can help you next year as you brace yourself for potentially Mike McGlinchey being gone.
True.
Or for Alex Mack being gone. You do have to have eventual replacements for them. Also, edge rushers for the 49ers or for the defense. I know a lot of people have been saying, well, we're stacked. We don't need anyone. But potentially, you have Ebukam in his last year of his contract. Jordan Willis on a 1-year deal. Minihue, last year of his contract. You have Kerry Hyder, 1-year deal. You have all these guys that could potentially be gone. Nick Bosa is going to be going to a 5th-year option. He'll probably have that exercise in May. So you don't really have a lot of long-term guys there. That's why an Ebukam extension would make sense at some point.
It does make sense at some point, and I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened yet. But hey, it is what it is. Jaylee just said, watched more Alec Pierce, and he absolutely loves it, and that's solid because that's a fantastic watch. Freakstomp saying, I'm late, but is the Deebo drama real? It's real in the sense that the things that are being reported have happened, but it being related one way or another to his contract situation or actually being frustrated with the San Francisco 49ers is yet to be seen.
Yeah, and I don't think the 49ers care. Well, no. I don't think, why would the 49ers care what he does on social media? So this is something that's going to influence what people, fans and things see from Deebo Samuel, and maybe that will put pressure, or he thinks will put fan pressure on them, but I'm not even sure he's not just trolling people. I don't know what
he's just trolling the media.
It potentially. I don't know what his actual play is here, but the one thing I know is I don't think it has an actual effect on the negotiations, because it's a public, it's a media thing. It has really nothing to do with the 49ers front office.
True. So you guys think Deebo's money this year would be $25 million and not a year from now, like 20 this year? No. If anything, what you're likely to see is just that money getting put into some sort of signing bonus structure or something like that. I don't think all of it would go in because, as Ant has talked about, number one, you have draft picks, and number two, you need to have that operating space throughout the season in case you want to make a move and bring another guy in and be able to eat up money on that contract for whoever it is that you trade for. But what I do think is that the Niners can start building out and if they got some of Jimmy G's money, they can put a little bit more in that first year, which would be the extension this year potentially, or next year, that they necessarily wouldn't be able to do if they don't have that money available.
Yeah, I think realistically they're going to give him a nice big signing bonus. They're going to put some money in his pocket. His number will be favorable to the team. Where they'll still have some of that money left over to be able to do what they want to do. So I don't expect it to be over $15 million in year one. I would expect it to be closer to $12 million, depending on also what that signing bonus is and how it's prorated throughout the whole life of his contract. But I think that they'll find a nice way to get him an increase, and he will get some of the money that he wants, knowing that money is going to kick really in 2023, potentially 2024 and 2025 as the playoffs continue to expand.
Android user Ant with the best comment of the night. He just got here, but he's already killing it. Deebo started the social media shenanigans just to give content creators more material for streams and to help us get more subs. Smash that like button.
There you go. To be honest, I that's why Deebo Samuel's not on the thumbnail. It wasn't something that I came in and was like, Alex.
Oh my God, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
We knew the TCC was going to ask questions. We knew that. We're expecting questions about Deebo Samuel. But neither one of us, when I saw the report, we didn't even text each other about it. We just got here. It was like, so Deebo Samuel's deleting stuff on social media. Oh no, it's time to panic.
I think we've seen this story before. It happens with a lot of players now. Could it be a negotiation play? It appears that they do this. I don't know what really effect it has, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if this ultimately makes the 49ers kick into gear and get something done. I don't think it will. John Lynch doesn't seem like the type that's like, oh my gosh, he unfollowed us on Instagram. We better do something quick.
Oh my Lord, guys. He unfollowed us on Instagram. His profile picture is done. He doesn't want to carry the rock for the 49ers anymore. We're screwed.
Yeah, maybe.
We're absolutely screwed. Oh my goodness gracious! And Rest just said Grant Cohn is a high school trying to cause drama on TikTok. Speaking of TikTok, apparently we have one of those now.
Yeah, we're on there. Yeah,
we do. So if you Linktree, we linked it a little bit earlier. It is down in the comment section below. If you're ever trying to find us on socials, trying to find a way to contact or talk to us about something, you've commented on videos and maybe we just haven't gotten back to you the way you want. Go to our Linktree. Our Linktree link is on our profile here on YouTube. It's in the comment section in the description of the video. You can click on that. They'll have an easy access link as well, and to RSVP for said draft party April 29th at Back Alley Brew in Galt, California.
Yeah, and if you see one of our posters that's going around for the draft party, you can just click the QR code. Just go ahead and take a picture of that. It'll take you directly right to our Linktree, so you can get on all of our socials and YouTube and everything else that's available.
Accurate. And you don't want to miss the draft party. It's going to be a lot of fun, 4 to 8 p.m. on April 29th. So make sure you're there. If you can be in the Northern California area, it's in Galt, California. Freak Stops just said, I'd trade Deebo for a Tyreek deal right now.
I think there's people that would do that, and I don't think Freak Stomp is far off from, I'm sure, a lot of 49ers beliefs.
He's definitely not alone here.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people really value draft picks to that level. I would have to see what exactly the money was looking like. I'm not in the inner workings of what the Deebo Samuel deal would look like. I'm sure at some point, if the money was just too far and they couldn't get close, that the 49ers would entertain something because you can't go without losing a player. But I don't think that's this year, because you have the franchise tag to play with next year. You could potentially stretch this out another year and make Deebo Samuel play on that rookie pay scale one more season. So I don't think it has to happen right now. And when that doesn't happen right now, the value for Deebo Samuel could actually be higher next offseason.
It's true.
So if you're playing it that way, maybe you don't make a move this year, but that is a lot of capital to be thinking about. So I get where people are going with this and their thoughts on potentially trading Deebo Samuel for a hefty haul.
And D-Will, you're not wrong. The Deebo contract probably happens during training camp. That has been the theme. Fred Warner, training camp. George Kittle, training camp. That's what's happened.
Yeah, it's like right before. I mean, I think George Kittle was like the day before.
It was.
Fred Warner was a few weeks before. This is kind of the area that they handle it, and I think that this will be something that comes up. Deebo Samuel could potentially hold out, but he wouldn't do it that long. Financially, it's not very good for the players anymore. There's a hefty hit from them not showing up. And Deebo Samuel hasn't made enough money over the life of his contract to be able to hold out because he's on a rookie pay scale.
Accurate.
If this was a guy that had already had a contract.
And this isn't a first round draft pick either.
No, I mean, well, yeah. But I mean, if he was, Stephon Diggs, for instance, he's made a lot of money in his lifetime of his contract. He could afford to sit out for a little bit. Deebo doesn't have that ability. So I think that's something to take into consideration as well.
True. And Free Tom just said, tell me you think he's going to be playing more than 70% of his games. If he continues running the football and having the same exact role and potentially even elevated even further, like we did this last season, it's hard to believe that his body's going to be able to withstand that type of holding. But if this is the outlier year, right, where what we just saw from him in terms of as a receiving option and as a running option, that much, that many touches, that many carries, that much of a pounding, if this was the outlier year, then yeah, he's going to be able to play 70% of his game.
Yeah, I can't tell anyone he's going to be able to play 70% of snaps. I don't know. I mean, I just can't. I can't potentially project what he's going to be able to do. You're hopeful that he can do that.
Injuries happen to everyone in every sport. It can happen to any player at any given time.
Especially athletes that push themselves to limits, like receivers who are going to be running routes all the time. So I think the 49ers would need a nice rotation. Potentially, the signing of Ray McLeod is going to take a little bit of that pressure off of him because he's going to do a little bit of extra things. The emergence of Brandon Ayuk, a little bit of a different style with Trey Lance. All these things could take a little bit of that away. I think they still need to address it. Like I said, a receiver that could take the top off the defense will make it a little bit easier as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way to know that a player is going to play more than 70% of snaps. And I'm not even sure you know if you want Deebo Samuel playing more than 70% of the snaps. You want a nice rotation where he can be resting, but you can't keep up what you were doing last year with him playing running back and wide receiver. Not for even the stretch of time they did it last year, but for sure it's only going to be certain points and then the playoffs, I think.
I think ideally, too, the Niners would prefer to see it later in the season and playoffs and sprinkle it in throughout the majority of the regular season, but we'll see, Ant. We'll see, and David just said 78% of his games in his career so far is what he's played, Deebo. of available games.
Well, 2020 definitely skewed that.
Skewed it.
He didn't start at the beginning of 2019. I think the first 4 games he didn't start. And then 2020 was marred by injury. 2021 he stayed, we played 19 of 20 games. I think that's a good mark. So you're hoping you're trending in the right direction. As going from 2020 to 2021, he changed his training habits, got into yoga, got into more flexibility training. So hopefully that will have a cause and effect. We know that worked for Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward, a guy who struggled with injuries. And then when he got into a different training method, definitely has helped the injuries along the way. So hopefully you're hopeful with Deebo because it's hamstrings and things like that, that's the same thing that'll happen.
You ideally would like that to be the case, Ant. And he's going to constantly be
later, Brad,
making changes. See you, Brad. He's going to be constantly making changes and doing different things. I mean, he is going to. He's going to be making subtle adjustments, and that's what these athletes do. Subtle changes to their game, subtle changes to their process, how they go about taking care of their body, how they go about keeping themselves not only in shape but working on different areas of weakness and things like that. And last year he focused on flexibility, focused on yoga, focused on some different things that helped keep his body a little bit more nimble and be able to potentially handle some of that pounding. Imagine he's going to keep the hot yoga in the routine, Ant. Probably going to stay.
Oh yeah, no, he will, because he was relatively healthy all season, and that's a good sign. Of course, you're going to get bangs and bruises, and you're really going to be struggling a little bit with the contrition of playing all these games. 19 of 20 games is a lot of games in the NFL. That's a lot of snaps, and that's why you don't see too many guys that can do what Deebo can. But the way he's built with his frame, he can handle that kind of workload. He's not going to be able to handle that consistently through a game in a season where you're going to play 20 games again. But he could do it on a short-term basis. A game here where he has to go off, a game there where he has to go off, where you use him in that wide back role to be able to get over the hump. And then the other ones he plays predominantly wide receiver, maybe even as a decoy at times, to be able to keep him fresh for the longevity of the season. That's really what you have to have.
Very true. It's very, very true. Look, Cutback Crew, we're going to take a couple more questions from y'all, and then we're going to wrap this thing up for the night. And as we start prepping for more draft content that's going to be coming their way and more draft positions are going to be broken down, we left the poll to you. You all decided Q&A, and that's A-okay by us. And it's always fun taking questions for the Cutback Crew.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love the interaction and what everyone's thinking. So when everyone comes in with their opinions, I love it. And whether we agree with you or not, that's not the point. The point is the conversation about it, because everyone sees things different. I coached for many years, and no coach saw things exactly the way I saw it. And that's just the way it is. You don't have always like minds. What you have is you want to have times where you disagree so you can throw things, bounce things off of each other and come to an agreement. That's why I loved Warzone, because we had difference of opinions from the guys that were there. So different opinions on prospects, different opinions on how the Niners attack it.
Absolutely, Ant. Absolutely. And we're looking forward to more of those conversations and more of those things. Looking forward to continual growth on this channel and more conversations with all of you, TCC, and getting through the rest of these draft prospects, Ant, because there are still positions the Niners could draft and go after. And we've brought up different positions, and we've gone through a host of different ones. And I've seen on all of our platforms, whether that's Facebook, when we posted the running back episode, and people on Facebook, getting back to us and being like, hey, no, Niners we don't need running backs. Why are you guys even bothering talking about this? To when we posted the receiver video, people wanting certain guys and upset about certain guys not being talked. There are a lot of different ways to look at this roster. There's a lot of different ways to look at the draft. And the best part about these conversations, especially here, is we want to have them with you. We want to talk about all the different names. We want to look at the guys that you're looking at and seeing. We want you guys to take a look at the guys that we've seen and we've noticed, because we all want everyone to be as prepared as possible. Know who the Niners could be going after and could be targeting. So that way on draft day, there's no surprises. We don't want any more Aaron Bankses. We don't want any more Aaron Bankses where you're just sitting there going, wait, what? Huh? How? Why? No more of those.
Well, that's what's going to make the draft stream so much fun, is we're going to be able to talk about players, hopefully, that we've already talked about when the 49ers make that selection, and really get into what kind of scheme fit they are and how the 49ers are going to use them, because that's an exciting time. We talked about this before. Optimism is an all-time high when you come out of the draft. You're happy about the players that you got and what potentially they could do for your team. So, yeah, I'm excited about the draft, and I'm excited about these breakdowns. Continually, we find players that shock us, surprise us, and we know that they could, do big things for the team down the road. So that's one of my favorite things, is finding these guys that no one talks about that could potentially turn into a big time player. And I'm ready to share all those with the TCC as we continue to move forward with these draft videos.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it as well. Look, Cutback crew, it's been a blast tonight. We've enjoyed the conversation with you. Android user, last question that I have: we concluded that Aaron Banks is a bust? Absolutely not. Under no way, no shape or form, no circumstance is there any way to be feeling that way, leaning that way. There's been no evidence to show that Banks is a bust. It seems like the Niners expected this guy to be a developmental guy, and he went from not being on the active 53-man roster throughout the year and to at the end of the season in the playoffs being an active member of said 53-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that they've approached the offseason shows and signals that they believe Aaron Banks is going to be one of these guys that could start at left guard. So we're just going to see what happens there. And I'm definitely not ready to write him off, just the same way I'm not ready to write off Javon Kinlaw. Let's see what they can do this year. I think this is going to be a big tell sign for both of them. Kinlaw's got to stay healthy, and with Banks, he's just got to improve. And if he develops into a starting left guard, then that's great for us. That's the huge potential the 49ers were looking for. We know he's in the room right now working on his body, trying to get right. And as long as it works, then he's going to be big time for this team.
That is going to be the important thing here. It's going to be check out Thornton's hand size. I believe it's only 8 inches in his age. I think he's almost 30, said Paul Sanders. I don't know if he's 30. I think he was 25 or 26. Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor.
Yeah, I don't know what his age is, to be honest with you.
I think he's 25.
I'm also I don't really pay attention to those type of things. I watched the film, and I would have went Danny Gray over him. I do like his height and stuff, but he's not that much bigger than Gray. I think I worry about his thickness, his 177 body.
He's a little lean.
I don't know if he's going to be able to handle the blocking. So we'll see. They were able to do it with like a Kendrick Bourne, for instance. He was able to turn into a pretty good blocker.
True.
Thornton does have that top end speed. I mean, if you're looking for speed, there's your guy. But I would have went Gray in that situation.
I don't necessarily disagree with you there, and I do love me some Danny Gray, do love me some Reggie Roberson, just love me some SMU products and prospects just in and of itself. Anthony got some good guys there. But look, Cutback crew, we had a lot of fun tonight. We enjoyed this with you. The Q&A is always lit. It's always fantastic. You always bring the great questions and the great insight. We enjoy having these conversations with you. But we're going to wrap this thing up, and it's about that time.
Yeah, it is. Let's chalk another one up.
Catch y'all later, TCC.
Later, TCC.
See you at the draft party.
Hey, TCC and 49ers faithful, are you coming to the draft party? Because we have been hearing from so many that they are. You're not going to want to miss the opportunity.
The outpouring is huge. Everyone is going to be there. We hope you are too.
Yeah, make sure you join us on April 29th from 4 to 8 at Back Alley Brewery in Galt. It's going to be so much fun. You're not going to want to miss it.
Not at all.